Hi, welcome to Slideshow. My name's Dave Hayward. I'm the founder of Europa Creative Partners. This episode, we have Nadia Ellis, who is a marketing and AI expert running a consultancy out of Wanaka, Queenstown, right here in New Zealand. I managed to mess up the audio at the start of this, so we're going to jump right into the action. Nadia is going to take us through a little demo of some AI agents that she's got going on, and then we're going to get into the slideshow. It's a great episode, so let's get into it.
I'm going to introduce you to some of my favourite friends today that help me out. So I'm going to introduce you to Potty, Problemo, Raggedy Ann, and a few others. So these are some of my agents that I've brought together and strung together.
Can you maybe just explain what an agent is? Because I think there's a lot of noise around agents, and I'm assuming they're not secret agents. They're quite public agents. So yeah, do you want to just talk us through?
They're not secret agents. And look, there has been a lot of debate within the community around what is an AI agent, and it really comes down to agency. Okay, and so you get some people who are quite I guess, academic in their way of thinking about AI agents, and that they can go in and take, actions on your behalf that involve things like link clicks, make decisions, all these sorts of things. But at a very simple level, you get like an AI assistant, which has been trained, and it can take some actions. It has some agency to do research or have opinions. But yeah, it really comes down to that level of agency. So it's basically just AIs that can do stuff for you.
Cool. And what's happening here? It looks like they're talking to each other. There's a sort of interplay between one or more agent. Is that what's happening, or have I got that completely wrong?
Yeah. So Typing Mind is a great place to start playing with AI assistants. They call them agents. And building out little friends that can do a specific thing. And then I've strung them together in basically an automation. I wouldn't usually do it in this platform, but I really wanted to be able to show you how they all interact together. So Potty is my friend who helps me. I love listening to podcasts. And I'm always like out on the go, or I might be running, and you get home and you're like, oh man, I want to take that insight and do something with it. So I created Potty to analyze transcripts. So I've dumped the transcript in there, and then he has come out with all of the key information from the podcast transcript that I might need to know. And then once we've got the basic outline, that is then passed on to Raggedy Ann. So Raggedy Ann is an assistant that is designed to create RAG knowledge bases. So what she does is she then uses Markdown, she pulls out the core information, and then I can just basically copy that and pop that into my own Notion database to reflect on later.
Now I'm going to put you on the spot here. Quick, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you what is a RAG? Because
okay. So RAG is retrieval augmented generation, right? Which is essentially you can create a knowledge base, and then the AI will go to that knowledge base to find its answers, and then that means that you're getting way better quality of information. Because if you think you go to Chad. And you say, hey, I want you to tell me how to build GPTs. It is going to go to the entire internet and try and come up with an idea. And so it's that real broad level of knowledge out there, and it might come back with something that's kind of average or generic or a bit bland as a result of that. If you create a knowledge base, then you're directing it only to that information so that you know that the quality of that content is going to be more in line with what you want it to do. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And in other words, it's one of the analogies that I've sort of, I don't even know if it's an analogy, but one of the ways that I like to think about it is it's about how an AI will actually just read documents, specific documents or assets that you give it, rather than going to the entire internet to do that. And it does that and can retrieve information at an incredible speed and precision.
Absolutely, because you're using like Markdown, right? So headers and structures so that it knows what it needs to look for. Just makes the whole retrieval of information way more seamless. And one thing that I do hear from businesses as a barrier, is to say, oh, well, we're not data ready. And I guess what this process demonstrates is that you don't have to have everything ready all at once. You can get the knowledge that you have, run it through an agentic workflow where you've got, assistants who are, their whole purpose is to take unstructured information or data that isn't perfect and turn it into a format that is going to be AI friendly.
Cool. And so what's happening here? Before I so rudely interrupted you, we had Raggedy Ann was working away there, and now we're up to. Yeah.
And then that information gets passed on to Cypher. So Cypher is one of my favorite assistants, and Cypher is designed to review meeting transcripts or transcripts in general, pull out pain points, secret sauce, things that make somebody special, and map processes, because good AI automation comes down to like mapping processes, and then figuring out like what to do with it next. Anyway, so it goes on, it comes out step by step, and then I'm asking it to actually come up with a visualization. I'm quite a visual person, so I feel like this is a nice step. And this is always fun, right? Because when you do one of these workflows, you never actually know what you're going to get. So it's always a bit of a surprise. We'll see. Then Problemo will come in, and he's designed to really succinctly describe problems to solve, which is also a really helpful thing if you're, trying to create a proposal or something like that. And then Erlich or Ursula is my brand voice echo. So she will then take all of the work that we've done thus far and write me a draft LinkedIn post so that I'm not working with a blank page. So that's just an example of, a very, very simple automation using a bunch of different agents to essentially get me started on something and help extract information. So
I think you're making the word simple work really hard right there. That's pretty amazing. I mean, it's pretty incredible if you think about where we were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and obviously if I'm a potential client of yours or a business out there, it's a little bit overwhelming to start with, and I suppose that's what you're here to help people, right? Is to kind of demystify and set these agents up for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, part of like what I wanted to share today, was how I got to this point, because I am not a technical person. I did all of that without any code. And I think a lot of people, they do get overwhelmed, and that is understandable, because even though I'm living and breathing this, I also get overwhelmed on a regular basis. But it is actually more accessible than what you might first think. And I really want to encourage people to dive in and have a crack. And so, showing that automation was just like, well, that's where you can get to. And yeah, take you through like, okay, that's piqued my interest. What do I do to build out my own hive? So, yeah.
Well, that brings us to the slides part. So, welcome to Slideshow. This is
Thank you.
the slides. And I hope you noticed that I synced up your slide colors with my T-shirt, which is...
oh, you did?
Totally on brand.
Love it.
So, take us away. Take us through your slideshow.
Yeah, okay. So, how did I go from being a marketer to a full-blown AI nerd? Well, it started a few years ago. I was at the peak of my marketing career. I'd just been promoted to GM of marketing for one of the biggest tourism companies in Queenstown. And I was like, living the dream, or so I thought. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer 6 weeks after I got my promotion. And so that definitely threw a bit of a spanner in the works. And like any ambitious person, I was just like, oh, we're good. I'm just gonna work through. So I just struggled on through and worked through 12 months of treatment. And not surprisingly, this might probably come to a surprise to anybody, at the end of that 12 months, I was just completely burnt out and had, really burnt out, and was just like, whoa, bit of a meltdown, took myself away for a few months and was just like, what am I going to do? Right. And I think Oliver Berkman, which is the quote on the slide, like, he summarizes it so beautifully when he says, mortality makes it impossible to ignore the absurdity of living solely for the future. And that was where I was at. And so I had to make that decision. Do I go back to the hustle? Do I go back to my job? Or do I give myself the space to learn, to think, to find some joy? And so I chose curiosity and I chose joy. And what does that look like for me? Well, it was finishing my Master of Science, which might not be everybody's idea of a sabbatical, but I only had the thesis component left. So I decided that that's what I was going to do. And my master's was through the University of Salford over in the UK. So I found myself working from Wanaka, or studying from Wanaka, without a cohort of other students. And my academic supervisor was in a different time zone. So I was kind of alone. And that's when I started thinking about AI. I mean, I've been using it like all marketers, right? Like, ChatGPT happened end of 23 and we all went, wow. But I wasn't thinking about AI as a content generator. I was thinking about it as like a thought partner. And so I started asking it things like, why would I use this academic theory over this academic theory? And what if I chose this topic over this topic? Do you think this topic would result in more, consultancy opportunity when I'm finished? And so it really wasn't about AI giving me answers. It was about AI helping me to think. And so I really began to explore and play and go, what are these systems capable of? I used it as to test, my own bias when I was doing my qualitative research. I was doing it all manually myself, and then I was putting it into AI and going, okay, what are they seeing? And it was fun, right? And again, Steve Jobs, wise man, much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. And that was exactly my experience in these early days of playing with AI. Because fundamentally, right, AI is weird. It is weird. It is not dependable. And the capabilities really shift from task to task. Like, something that you would think would be relatively straightforward, like write a 50-page paragraph, it's going to find really difficult. But if you ask it to write a sonnet, it's able to do that quite easily. So Ethan Mollick, who's one of my favorite professors who speaks on this topic, he talks about that as the jagged frontier, which is essentially like finding out the edges, like what it's good at, what it's not good at. And the only way you can do that is by playing. And during that time, during my sabbatical, I had time to play. And when I got to the end of that process and hit send on my thesis, I was hooked. And I was like, well, what else can it do? Like, if I can make it a really good research assistant, what else can I do with it? And I went into a fractional role, and one of the first things that happened in my fractional role is we did Clifton Strengths. And so I thought, I wonder what would happen if I got my Clifton Strengths and put it into a custom GPT and used it to help guide me on a day-to-day basis on things that I'm struggling with using my Clifton Strengths. So that was the first time that I created an AI assistant, and I named him Cliff.
Yeah.
And Cliff has just been awesome, and it's really gone from there. And now I have essentially just built out from there, and now I have what I sort of call my curiosity hive. So I spent some time yesterday just pulling them all together to give an indication of like the number of them really. And I really consider it as this ecosystem that I've created, which is ever evolving. Like it's always moving, shifting. I get bored of people, you know, and then I bring others in. I have my favorites. And it's anybody now can have their own ecosystem of friends, experts, thought partners, mentors, that help you achieve tasks, think better. Yeah, it's really like once you get into it, the use cases are literally endless. And
And also quite joyful. That's what I like about it, you know,
so
because it's
joyful.
so much tech is, I don't know, Excel spreadsheet. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good spreadsheet. I think I have a sort of love-hate relationship with spreadsheets like most marketers, but yeah, this is the possibilities of for being someone on their own or
Yeah.
in a small team are really exciting, aren't they?
Absolutely. And it is so fun. You know, you can give them personalities that make them super engaging, you know, like you can tell them what kind of like interaction you have. Like, do you want somebody who's like sassy and funny and who's going to give you a hard time? You know, and that might be for your corporate coach, for example. And then for your life coach or your mentor, you know, I'm like, please be like Brené Brown. You know, I want you to have empathy. I want you to have compassion. I want you to be supportive. So you get to define and create with your own imagination your dream team of support partners and experts, which is awesome. So I thought just to get the audience thinking in terms of, I mean, obviously I can't go through all of these guys. So
We
I
should
thought I would just.
actually think of our audio people and maybe describe. I've
Oh,
completely
true,
forgotten. Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
Yes.
so let's go back. Well, we can do this slide here. So basically, what Nadia has done is she's depicted a whole lot of hives, and within each hive, just like in a beehive, is a picture or a icon of all sorts of fun-looking people. Some of them are illustrations, some of them are memes. We've got Elmo up there with the flames. I saw Eric Cartman a bit earlier from South Park. So, yeah, there's and then some words which we're going to take you through now.
Yeah, so each little picture represents an AI assistant
Okay,
and
cool.
or agent, you know, depending on how you want to describe it. So an individual AI that has been highly tuned and trained, or not always highly tuned, but given a really specific job to do.
Yeah.
And so one of the fun parts is like choosing the icon for it. And so, you know, one Amy is she's my mentor, my kind of life coach mentor. And I named her after my great grandmother, Amy Ellis. And so that's why like the picture that I selected is kind of like, you know, from the, you know, the 30s.
From
So
30s, yeah.
it's part of the fun, it's part of the joy. But yeah, so I just wanted to talk to basically sort of 3 different hives that I have in my life. So I've got my personal hive, my home hive, my helper hive, and then my business hive. So at home, again, I've just talked to Amy, so she's my sort of mentor and coach. But one that I came up with the other day is I called Link Bob. So my son is multi-exceptional, he's gifted, he's neurodiverse, he has learning disabilities, which is really complex to deal with and to support him to be the best that he could be, not just for me, but like for, you know, his teachers and his teams around him. And so what I did is I got all of his cognitive assessment data. I uploaded that along with his term goal settings, his 1-day school, you know, term, like that. They're doing a whole piece on strategic thinking. So I loaded that into it. I've done a whole bunch of research using chat deep research, like I'm currently on the pro version. So building out a whole bunch of knowledge specifically to support gifted and multi-exceptional kids. I put all of that into the GPT and then said, right, I need you to help me parenting. These are some of the issues that I face. And now I've got that expert that is specifically designed and has intelligence for my son at my fingertips at any point. So that's amazing. And then when people come and ask me if I can help them out, I often get people asking me to help them with their CVs or whatever. And I was like, in the old days, you would have that interaction or that project or whatever you're doing to help somebody in your life. And at the end of that, it's finished, right? But now you can take that experience and turn it into something permanent. So one of the things, I've got friends within the community who really struggle. They've got ADHD. It's hard to get to prioritize. So I built ADHD, the robot from Dogman, if you know, you know. And, loaded it up with like a whole bunch of things to specifically take, it was designed to take unstructured verbal, I call it word vomit, right? Where you literally just go blah, 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 take that word vomit and then turn it into a structure around, right, these are the priorities, this is what it's going to help me. So those are some sorts of things that are not necessarily in the workplace. But then within the workplace, again, sky's the limit, but a couple that I have had good success with recently is I created a marketing mentor for an exec that I'm currently leading. And again, this is the sort of thing for businesses of all sizes, right? You need to think about where is the bottleneck. And a lot of times the bottleneck is actually the leader. It's your expertise. It's your time. It's your mentorship. That is the bottleneck. And so how do you scale that? And so with this mentor, I loaded into it her job description, the strategic plans of the organization, the things that I knew from working with her that she was amazing at, the things that her Clifton strengths, the areas of personal development. And then I told her, I spoke to the exec and I was like, what are you interested in? How do you want it to speak? And so we designed it so that it was going to be a really fun partner for her to engage with. And again, now, instead of constantly sort of saying, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? She's got a mentor 24/7 that is completely private to her, that will never judge her, that will help her. And, that's so powerful for people. And then
Never gets tired. That's phenomenal. I mean, look, I'm my sort of, key discipline, I think, is writing was one of the things I do. And obviously copywriting has become, transformed by AI. And, the way that I end up using it is not necessarily to write drafts. It's often just to help me structure something. And I've got a sweet spot for writing. It's normally in the morning and, or maybe sort of mid-afternoon after lunch. But the reality is deadlines don't let me actually hit those sometimes. Sometimes I've just got to write through the kind of fog of my brain. And that's what the AI never sleeps. It's always ready for it and doesn't think any of my questions are dumb,
Exactly. So, it's so supportive. And I think it just gives people, not only does it save time, it gives people confidence, because they can have this conversation in a safe space and not feel like they're being a nuisance, not feel like they're, taking time. And that's why I really, one of my things that I really want to drive home and to start really talking more about is just I think Gen AI especially has just got this, it's been put in a bit of a box around it's to create, content or it's to output things, it's in the name, generative AI. And that really misses what I think is the most powerful use case, which is thought partnership and expertise, commoditized intelligence. It's pretty wild.
Something like 20 to 30% something like 20 to 30% of decisions can be made faster with AI. That's a stat that I found from some research I did recently. And that, I think that came up actually in the new Anthropic white paper that they just released, the economic index. Sorry to cut you off there, Nadia.
No, not at all. And I think that's just going off on a slight tangent. One of the things, again, that I'm really passionate about is that the use cases are so broad that we really need everybody within organizations to lead and to be involved and on the journey. Because, when you're talking about being able to make decisions way faster, being able to look through, volumes of information, so on and so forth, each individual department needs to figure out what that looks like. Each individual needs to figure out what that looks like. So this is just one, way of doing this, or the first step in doing this is starting to create these AI assistants or agents with a very specific task.
Now, just thinking of Dan here, we've got 20 minutes to go. So how far are you along? Are we kind of
we're
on
wrapping
target?
up.
Great.
I've got I was just going to go through like how to build an assistant, what it looks like in a workflow, and then wrap up.
Oh, sounds great. Okay, well, let's get into that.
So obviously this is, I've thrown out heaps of different ideas here. But what is the actual step? Like if you're sitting there and you've never built an AI assistant before, you're like, okay, this all sounds great in theory. What do you actually do? Look, it's not that hard. So what I've done is I've created a little diagram here, which is the honeycombs, because I'm sticking with the hive theme. So to build your hive, the first thing that you need to do is deeply understand the problem that you're trying to solve, or the objective. So where AI gets really, it struggles, is that when you give it conflicting instructions. Like, for example, if you say, give me a detailed summary, for example, on the one hand, you're saying, I want something detailed, which indicates, a depth of information. And on the other hand, you're saying it's a summary, and so it can be quite tricky. And so this takes the human to actually stop and pause and go, what do I want to do? And so once you've defined that problem or purpose, then you can stop and go, okay, in order to do that, what intelligence do I need? What expertise do I need? What, what are the outputs? And think about that and start gathering that information. And this is where like deep research, like the OpenAI deep research is really powerful, because all of that information, it's at your fingertips now. So start pulling together the information. And if you're building one for like a business, that could be, marketing plans, or strategic plans, or brand voice guidelines, or whatever the intelligence and the documentation that it needs to achieve the problem. So that's step 2. Step 3 is...
Sorry, Nadia. Deep research, which is part of ChatGPT,
Yes.
and also the custom build of custom GPTs, you can get that on a $20 US a month plan, or at least I've got that anyway somehow. And so I think the barrier to actually getting these tools is actually pretty low to begin with, even with the New Zealand dollar and the absolute on the floor at the moment. But yeah.
I mean, look, I understand that people are concerned about cost, and if you haven't used it, you don't necessarily know what's possible. But for $40 Kiwi a month, like, you'd be crazy not to just have that plus version of ChatGPT.
Totally.
And that's how you can, at a basic level, start building out these assistants. And which brings me nicely to to step 3. Choose your platform. So the easiest way to get started is building out a custom GPT. And it's so straightforward. There is an option. It just says build your own GPT. And at the most basic level, you can just have a back and forth conversation. You don't need to configure it or anything like that. You can just basically like, this is what I want you to do. And the GPT that will come off the back of it, will be moderately good. And if you then want to take it to another layer, another step, you can, configure the instructions using some more sort of prompt engineering type techniques. If you want something that is, custom GPTs are limited to 8,000 characters in their instructions.
Yep.
And then you've got other options like in Google Gemini, they're called Google Gems. I haven't used them. And Anthropic, you've got Claude projects, which behave in a similar way. So, there's different options out there. But you are in those sort of consumer-facing models, they are quite basic. And if you wanted to take it to another level, that's when you go into different tools, Typing Mind, Cassidy, Relevance AI. There's a ton of these different platforms. And that is where you start getting the real magic. That is, when you're building out an assistant to that level of detail, that's when you can get things to 95% as opposed, or 99% as opposed to like 60, 70. And at a basic level, you can say, be a helpful assistant, and it's going to be okay. Or you can come up with something that is literally 2 pages long. So choose your platform on the complexity of what you're trying to do, and what be realistic about your needs, and then you configure it. So jumping around a little bit, after you choose your platform, you then build out your instructions, which is what I just talked about before. Conversation, prompt engineering, just depends on what you need to do. And then go back and test it, evaluate it. Is it working for you? Do you hate the way? Does it come back to you and always say something really cringy like, here's the kicker, or this is going to be game changing?
Game changer. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like, oh, please never say that. And then you can go back into your instructions or back into your custom GPT and just be like, never, ever, ever say ABCD, or, be more relaxed and conversational, or, be more succinct, so you can tweak it. And at that sort of far end, you can get really detailed into sort of evaluations, and it becomes like a big thing. Then you monitor and maintain. So define your purpose, gather your info, choose a platform, give it instructions, test it, see if it works, keep an eye on it. Simple as that. Then, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but then the next step is then pulling those agents or assistants together into a workflow, which is what I demoed up front. And so it's about, I've got a diagram here of a different range of hexagons, the hive with different bees that would have different jobs. And the secret to getting these right is to slow down. Right? Tyler Fisk, who's, one of my prompt engineering heroes, says slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So, you need to stop and go, what is the step-by-step of the entire process, and what expertise do I need at each step in order to achieve what I'm looking for?
Of course, you could just cut out the, the confusion of doing it yourself and just, work with you, right?
Well, yes, there's that too. But I want to be able to give people, don't be afraid, just go and play, and not everybody is going to want to get somebody to come in and do it. I can come in and do this type of thing. Mm-hmm. But also get out, have a play, experiment. So
I think one of the things I'm really into at the moment is custom GPTs, because GPT is, oh my God, hopefully they'll edit that out. Because I think they're highly underrated. There's sort of this tech, because there's so much new stuff like deep research and all these other models coming out. I think if the custom bots were, still the only thing on the market, would still be obsessing about them, right?
Absolutely. And also, I think, again, making it accessible is a double-edged sword in some ways, right? Because if somebody goes in and they make a custom GPT and they don't really know what they're doing, and they don't really know what they want, and so they're kind of giving it really obscure instructions, and so then the outputs that they're getting are kind of rubbish, and then they go, oh, this AI thing's such a load of shit, and it's like, no, it's not. A lot more can be achieved. There's levels of this, and I've been spending the last 4 months getting quite deep into, building out agents and agentic workflows. And I can tell you, prompt engineering is an actual thing. It is a thing. But you don't have to start there. Yeah. So what does this mean for everybody, right? What does this mean for everybody? And I think Kieran Flanagan from Zapier really summarizes this beautifully. In the future, resumes will be obsolete. Your professional value will be defined by the AI agents you build. And so I share that not to scare people, but to get people for additional motivation to go, this is coming, whether you like it or not. It's actually here. Yeah. And so the faster you get amongst it and start building and playing, the more prepared you are going to be in the future. And that's basically what I've found for myself, right? Now that intelligence is commodified, it all comes down to like your creativity to go, okay, what are the potential use cases? What are the expertise I need? How can I get all of my agents working together in a really effective way? Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, he said that in the future, he imagines NVIDIA being 50,000 employees supported by 100 million AI assistants, and that every person within his company is going to be a CEO of their own agents. So this is the future, right? This is the future.
Yeah. And I think there's so much focus on job loss. I've been working on a piece on job displacement at the moment, but right now, I think it's the World Economic Forum have just published something which basically said that they think we're going to lose about 10 million jobs this year to AI, but we're going to create 19 million. So we've sort of net of about 9 or 10 million jobs. And I think, we're in the middle of an industrial revolution where there are, if your job is cutting and pasting documents and sticking it, basically your job is at threat, But if you're, for the rest of us to move up higher in the value chain, it's a really big opportunity. But it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be a kind of linear thing as well. It'll just be a bit asymmetrical, I reckon.
I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, we're moving into an era of ideas. If you've got an idea, you can make that a reality. Like me as a known coder, I can build my own website, I can build my own app, I can build my, and when you think about from an entrepreneurship perspective, what that means, but it's frightening, and we don't know what's coming, and nobody has a plan necessarily. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts with Paul Raitzer, the Artificial Intelligence Show. Definitely recommend people check that out. And he was talking about Sam Altman saying that the change that we're going to see in the next 5 years is the equivalent it's going to be as different as if we went backwards 500 years.
Oh.
So, it's too hard to wrap the head around, right?
Yeah.
But look, I mean, we could go down a real, we could talk on that one. That's a conversation for another podcast. But I think, look, what I really want to leave everybody with today is, there's a reason why I called my business Curiosity. And that is because in this day, in this age, in this era, let curiosity be your compass, play, explore, discover. Ethan Mollick says every person has got to, invest 10 hours of their time to start really understanding what AI is about, be on the tools for 10 hours, doing whatever. And that if you haven't had 3 sleepless nights about the impact of AI, you haven't got it yet.
No, totally. That's great.
So, get on the tools, explore, play, find your own jagged frontier. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to invest your time.
Big thank you to Nadia Ellis for coming on Slideshow. If you want more information about Nadia or any of the guests that we've had on Slideshow, you can go to our website, which is www.europa.nz. And if you could leave a like or subscribe on your favourite platform wherever you're listening or watching this, we'd really appreciate it. See you next time.